Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey, hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
Got another individual joining us. Hello, welcome. We have
Hi,
oh,
Rachel.
same team. Cool, cool. Very cool. Because
Mhm.
so far it's just us, so we can definitely make it more of like a one-on-one training.
Oh, look at that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And this is service provider training session number 1. So I think let's just jump into it. So my name is Rachel Lighty. I am the director of cyber compliance here at cyber education at FutureFeed, and I also do these trainings
Nice to meet you.
for now.
Mhm.
To meet you.
For now,
Yeah, for now. I'm really hoping to record a lot of them. It'd be
for
nice to have
sure.
like a suite of educational videos, you know,
Hmm.
for
A future feed
functionality.
university.
Yeah. Yeah. But that'll takes time. So I'm
Well, I've
fairly new
been,
to future feed myself.
I started talking to Chase already about creating a center of excellence and a community of trust
Mm-hmm.
for the practitioners. And so if you want to record those videos together, we can. Let me know.
Yeah.
Because they're usually more, I was a professional educator when I was in the military, so it's usually a lot more engaging if you have two or three instructors all kind of talking about a
Right.
subject at once. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I would love that
hmm
actually. We do have videos in our platform. I'm sure you've seen.
hmm Yep.
Those were created prior to me coming on board many years ago, I think now, and
Hmm.
those need to be reworked eventually. But then we want to do educational videos, especially for like a service provider track and end user track. And so
Hmm.
let me just make a note here. So um, I don't forget to reach out to you when I'm ready to have that conversation.
Yeah, years ago I did training videos for the Air Force and Air National Guard on like how to meet a board. I was
Mhm.
uh I was acting out the bad example. It was fun.
Very cool. I also did some education in the Navy. I was in the Navy.
Yeah,
Um,
cool. Mhm.
I did Navy blue team, Navy red team
Oh, fun.
training division. All right, so let me share my screen here. Still getting used to a Mac computer.
Mhm.
Gonna take
Mhm.
some time.
Yeah. And share future feed. There we go. Okay. All right, so since this is a service provider track, I'm going to start by showing you a couple add-ons. Maybe you've already purchased them, but just talk about what they are and if you are using them or you choose to use them, how they can help you. The first thing is we call our template environment or our template subscription. Are you guys, do you have that? Are you using that? Are
I
you?
do have a service provider template. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So, just to briefly touch on that, then is how you would use that. Um, it let's pretend that this is my service provider template. Is you would fill out anything, really, any of the fields in here that you see, where you want to fill it out, and all of your clients then would you would duplicate that environment, and then when they log in, they would see all that information. Their environment would be um already filled out with, I'm assuming, what you're calling inheritance from your company, right?
Hmm.
So I guess if it, we can really tailor it to what your company does. What is it that you guys are providing? Just consulting services, or do you do vulnerability scanning? Um,
I'm still building the practice, and so right now we're only doing the readiness assessments.
okay,
Um, but they'll have the option of having continuous monitoring services or
okay,
remediation services after the initial engagement.
very cool. All right. So then let's over in the assess area. Let's say in the future when you do that continuous monitoring service for your clients, of course they would then have some inheritance. I'll call it inheritance sometimes or shared responsibility. Um, but under this one here, monitor security controls on an ongoing basis. Um,
Hmm.
so I'm sure, like, let's say you were already doing this for your clients, some of your clients or all of them, then in here, you would mark it, partially or fully inherited, depending on the scope of your service and if it covers all of their environment. And then you develop out a statement, security controls are monitored by your company on an
Hmm.
ongoing basis following this process as agreed upon in this document and see our shared responsibility matrix for additional details. Um, so that's what the template environment is
Hmm.
let's say every one of your clients, that's just part of your standard services. Then when they get access to their environment, instead of you having to go in there and fill out this inheritance and the statements and maybe upload that associated evidence, you would do so in that template environment and then just copy it for every one of your clients.
Hmm.
And so for people under the people section, if you're doing consulting right now, then potentially there's some roles that you can create uh, related to the people at your company doing the consulting or even some teams that
Hmm.
you want to create and all of your clients have access or, be able to reference that in your environment, in their environment.
Yeah, and after I go through a successful few engagements with our C3PAO that we've partnered with,
Hmm.
um, I'll probably provide templated governance straight in FutureFeed because currently I'm providing it via email for them to
Hmm.
tailor. Yeah, so that I would probably have their governance, all of their policies already in there as well.
Sure. Yeah. So that's definitely something then you would just house it in the documents. But the
Hmm.
one thing I want to point out about that, and it brings me to my next feature that you could purchase um, whenever you're ready or want to, is we have what we call a library, a document library. And so if you like pretend I'm in my template environment and let's say I uploaded this acceptable use policy template. Um, if I click on it, it's got the live document. Here's the template. Here's the version I want my clients to modify and tailor to their.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but however this template is laid out in the information that's static, let's say in the future you had to update your template, you wanted to improve it. You would have to go in and update the version in your template environment so that way all future clients get that
Hmm.
newest template. But you would have to go into all of your individual active clients and get their document updated to
Hmm.
that new template. Whereas if you have a document library, it would look very similar to, well, I'll show you the internal look on how your clients would see it, but then I'll also show you how you would see it. So,
Quick question. On the
mhm.
templates, are these templates provided by FutureFeed or are these templates that we would upload that we're providing for our clients, or is it both?
Well, all of your clients, including yourselves, you do have access to these 55 templates that FutureFeed has put into the system. Um,
Hmm.
we don't maintain them though. They're just, I think, taken from like SANS or other,
Hmm.
institutes that are publicly available. But see how we have this compliancy IT document toolkit? This is a company and they sell their, they have their own set of top templates.
They're out of
Mhm.
Ohio, right?
I'm not sure where she's located. Leah
Mhm.
Shilabad is the owner of that company.
Hmm.
Um, and so if you had a a document library because you wanted to provide your own templates, then you could purchase a document library and then house all of your templates in there. And so whenever you get a client, instead of them having entries like this with your templates from the template environment, they would just open up Populate, click onto your document library, and select the templates that they want to use that you offer. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. And then what that would look like is internal. So here's the internal view is, so this is how you would maintain all your templates then. See,
Mhm.
you'd upload them here. Okay. And then let's say
Mhm.
you have, and this is blank, it's empty. Um, uh, if you then needed to make an update to your template, you would just do so once in here, and then all of your clients could navigate to that document library and pull down that latest template.
Mhm.
Okay, and so that's an additional cost, of course. I'm not sure of the cost on that, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention. If you do get in the business of producing your own templates that you use for all your clients, then two ways to get those templates to your clients. One way is to upload them all into that template subscription and
Mhm.
create inventory items. I refer to these as inventory items for each one. Or purchase the document library add-on and house them in a library where then
Mhm.
your clients could pull them down.
Okay.
Very cool. All right. So, other than that, I kind of just run through in today's session. I'm going to get through start, people, tools, documents, and then we'll end there. In the second session, I talk about assessing SSP and managing poems in FutureFeed.
Okay.
And I just want to highlight quick since I'm not going to get to it today. It's in the next session that you would have to sign up for. But you mentioned you're doing uh, basic assessments or readiness assessments for your clients right now. And
Mhm.
I'm not sure if it's kind of a hidden function. Uh, right now, I'm hoping to get this advertised a little bit better. But we have what we call a rapid assessment. Have you seen that in the tool?
No.
Okay. So right now, if I did a basic assessment for a client in this assess view right now, I would have to, click on each control, fill out this information, and then go to the next control, fill out this information. But typically during a basic readiness assessment, you're not always collecting the evidence at that point in time. It's usually provided afterward, right? So some of these other fields here you may not use.
Mhm.
But to get to the rapid assessment version, you do have to navigate to any control and then go over here to the hamburger icon or menu icon and see this little running guy. So now click on him and now I'm in an access control and all of my controls are listed out like this. Just that requirement satisfaction summary section, not
I
the other
see.
sections about interview,
Mhm.
examine, test, all those things. And so this may be a little bit quicker way to like scroll through, ask your clients, do you have this? Yes or no, yes or no, hit
Mhm.
yes or no. You're still building out their system poem in the background,
Mhm.
um, but you just don't have to click on each control and see those other fields.
Cool.
So that's called the rapid assessment. And I've asked the dev team, it's
Mhm.
on the list of things to do, is to take this little running man icon and put it, some
Yeah.
here. So that way we could just switch over to that
Mhm.
feature here. But for right now, you do have to kind of drill down and get to this point and then click over here. Okay, so other things I would like to show you real quick. And I think I created this in this environment. So over here under documents, you have a couple places where you could develop or create some client instructions. Okay, so when you bring on a new client,
Mhm.
you're gonna have to tell them what they need to do in the tool. Um, and you can do that communication inside FutureFeed, which is what I would recommend, or you could do it outside in an email or something. But ways you can do it inside FutureFeed. Uh, you could create a list, kind of like a checklist of things that they need to do initially when they get into their environment. Um, and I'll show you what one of those would look like. Um, so you could create this checklist, which will, I mean, make it better than the one I have here, but welcome to FutureFeed. This is your FutureFeed environment. The things we need you to do first is, and then list them. And so then your only communication to your client would be, hey, we just created your account into FutureFeed. You should now be able to log in. When you log in, please go to the list document section, open up this document, title the document, and say start working on the items in there. Because you need them to fill out a lot of that company background information, upload their logo, um, maybe define the roles and security teams that they have, all that stuff. And so you could make a nice document that lists out everything you want to do with them, provide some instruction, provide some guidance on where in FutureFeed they need to do that action, and then have them work off this checklist, checking the items they complete, making notes, and then so I'm just trying to show you you could
Mhm.
do a lot of this communication in FutureFeed. Um, however, uh, since I'm here, there's things to note about templates in FutureFeed. This live document area, as you just saw, I was filling this out, but you don't want your clients to fill this out in this area. This is your master checklist. This is the checklist you want um, to use multiple times. For example, this probably would be better in an agenda. Here, I've created a meeting agenda. So I'm sure you'll have to meet with your clients on some sort of defined frequency. You might want to think about making a meeting agenda for that meeting and filling it out every time. Here's one for a monthly compliance meeting. So here's my agenda. This is what we want to cover every time I meet with my client. Um, for that, let's say we're about to go into May's meeting to produce evidence and document that meeting happened in the meeting notes. You do that in the evidence section. So over here is where I'd say add new evidence. It presents me that template right here. This is the version I want my clients to fill out. So here, if they fill this out, let me make a few filled out. Let's say we just had the meeting. I filled this out during the meeting. Now I'm going to hit save. Um, Sorry, let me give it a title. May meeting. Save and complete. And now I can sign off, approve those meetings and mark complete. Now it's going to log in my evidence the May meeting notes. And if I click on it, there's see how I checked those and filled it out. Date and timestamp. I can't edit this. So, whereas if they start filling out this version, they're changing that master
Mhm.
template. So that's,
Mhm.
you just want, it takes a little bit of user education.
Mhm.
But same thing with that checklist is don't modify this one, go over to the evidence, add new evidence, and grab a version of that checklist or grab a version of whatever that template is.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So let's just go over the start area and I'll just highlight some important stuff in here. So company information, of course, the logo, this is coming, all of this, a lot of this is coming from your clients. So whether you guys fill it out for them or you ask them to fill it out once they get access, up to you. But I would just say anything that you're communicating to them, try to turn into some sort of template or checklist or agenda. So that way you can make that repeatable for all your clients inside that template subscription environment. Nothing too fancy here. One thing I wanted to point out is this risk appetite. This is where you're going to meet with your client and help them identify what their risk approach is. And then where this information comes into play is within the system POAM when they're trying to prioritize remediation efforts or areas improvement. That's all determined typically based on risk tolerance and impact and cost and effort. Corporate data, company description here, have your client fill out all of this information. All throughout FutureFeed, we have these getting started pages. These were recently added with the new release. It's like user manual information, user guide information now within each page. And it's specific to the page you're in. So if I go to locations, this information is just specific to locations. Um, in locations, this is an important area. This is where your clients are going to start defining their assessment boundary or compliance boundary. I like to refer to it as a compliance boundary, but I know a lot of people use
Mhm.
assessment scope because that's what the cap put out. But we're not assessing, we're helping the clients implement. So it's a compliance boundary. But anyway,
Mhm.
so new locations here is, they start logging all the locations that the company uses, manages, works out of, rents, all that stuff. Um, After they log the location, which you could see the fields that have to be filled out, then they would need to open it up and start filling out all this metadata. It's really important under compliance for them to identify, does this location store, process, or transmit FCI, yes or no? Or does this location store, process, transmit CUI or protect CUI? And then they'd reflect that there. So that's how they start defining their boundary. I would recommend, and the same thing, what I'm about to say is applicable to the tools area, technology. We have some clients that use FutureFeed and they only put in FutureFeed what they know needs to meet the requirements. You know,
Mhm.
um, I recommend when I do my training is that to log everything, log all the locations, log all the technology, and then within the metadata, further define what's in scope of the requirements and what's out of scope. So in tools, it's going to look in the compliance area like this. You still have the CUI flag and the FCI flag, but then also we have this additional asset category. And so I would say log everything and really rely on this metadata here to define what's in scope and out of scope. Here it really clearly says something's out of scope. And why I recommend that is because when your clients go into that C3PO assessment, part of the very first process of the assessment, CMMC assessment process is to have that discussion about scope. the C3PAO assessors need to understand what the assessment scope is. And obviously, they are going to talk about everything that's in scope of the requirements, but also they need to understand what was deemed out of scope and why was it out of scope. And so documenting even your out of scope assets or your out of scope locations in FutureFeed is going to help lead that discussion. So here you'd say it's out of scope, and then over in the overview section under description, you might document your analysis. Why did you say it was out of scope? And then maybe in the evidence area, you upload some evidence validating that your determination of out of scope was accurate. Because when it comes to technology, out of scope assets need to be physically or logically separated from in scope assets. And so you might need to upload some evidence of that logical separation. Okay.
Mhm.
And so having all of that in FutureFeed is just going to help with having that discussion in the future, because sometimes your clients, they're not going to go into assessment for like a year or year and a half, 2 years out. It could be a while. And when they
Mhm.
have that discussion of what they said was in scope, it may be, it may have happened so long ago that they need some refresher. And so having that in here
Mhm.
is going to help lead that discussion.
Probably different people who did the analysis.
Yeah, yep, true.
There's a high turnover these days.
Yep, so you need that analysis documented and some evidence, right? And
Mhm.
so, let me get back to that locations area. So, I mean, it's up to you, it's up to your clients how they wanna use it. Document only what they know is gonna be in scope, or I would say document everything
Mhm.
and then categorize.
Mhm.
Capture your analysis and your evidence. So, new locations, though, you are starting to define your scope, right? Because locations are assets, typically security protection assets, if there's FCI and CUI at those locations. Maintenance and ownership here, you start to define at a high level hardware and software used in the company, as well as maintenance and ownership of hardware and software. So you can kind of see how I did it. But if you want a good example, head up into the getting started guides under compliance implications. I put an example there of how to document that.
Mhm.
Scope, this is where they then start defining their system. Give it a unique identifier. What is the scope type? What's the implementation type? Um, CIA impact levels. This is our tool is designed also, I think, here we
Mhm.
also have
Mhm.
853 in there, which when you get into 853 RMF realm, you really rely on the CIA
Mhm.
objectives. But I would say for your CMMC clients, make sure they at least have the confidentiality set to moderate, or they could go high, but it shouldn't be at a low. An assessor may
Mhm.
see that and get spooked, right?
Mhm.
Um, Number of users in the environment, and then start describing that system boundary and what the purpose of the system is. Contracts, this is a good location, especially if you're working with a client that hasn't defined their boundary yet, and they have to have that whole scoping conversation.
Mhm. Yep.
So here is a place where you can help them identify the contracts that they currently have, if
Mhm.
they currently have some, that are, driving a level 1 FCI environment and requirements, or any of the CMMC level 2. Um, so this information, when it gets filled out, it is displayed in the system security plan as well. So it could be referenced if I was filling out future feed under that AC313 control when you have to define your CUI flow. Well, it starts with these contracts, right? So you might want to reference this section of future feed under that control. But here's where you would help your clients log their contracts, and the cage code or cage codes that are going to be associated with this environment.
Mhm.
Data inventory. So here, after you define locations, then you define the contracts and the data security requirements on those contracts. Then you get into identifying the data types in this environment. So is this just a level 1 environment, FCI environment? In which case up here you'd be sitting under a
Mhm.
level 1, or is it CUI and FCI? Um, let me switch to a different environment that's got some more data in it. So here, it's for FCI, it's as simple as saying, yes, this tool does store, process, or transmit FCI, or it doesn't. And the tools are not going to show up until you've worked with your client to have them document their technology in the tools area. So after they create all these listings for technology, then they'd have to go back in here under FCI and select which assets store, process, or transmit FCI. CUI, all of this is directly taken from the NAR website, and all these hyperlinks bring you to the NAR website, which is good for your clients to reference if they need to, especially when it comes to the banner marking requirements and the handling requirements. So here, you're working with your client to identify the type of CUI they're working with, and it's clicking a box. Or this tool, how this shows up, I'll do it for this naval nuclear. Right now, they're both checked. If you want to, right now, when the check box is marked, we're just telling any reader of this that yes, in this environment, we have CUI specified naval nuclear propulsion information. But you can get more granular with that. So here above, we're saying that this specific asset endpoint protection is storing, processing, or transmitting DoD critical infrastructure information. And how, if you want to get that granular, how you do that is in the tools area. So focus on the naval nuclear CUI specified. If I go into tools and I select a tool, I'll select this database. If I go over into compliance and click on CUI, go down to naval nuclear. So I'm saying that this database it's a CUI asset, and the type of data it has is naval nuclear propulsion information,
Mhm.
CUI specified. Now if I go back to that data inventory area, that's when the wrench is going to show up. So now it said
Mhm.
that's when the tool shows up. So it's up to you how granular you
Mhm.
want to get it. Again, you can see how all of this is going to relate to that
Mhm.
AC313 control in defining the flow of CUI and identifying authorized mechanisms. Sensitive data, this is a place we have some clients that are using the tool not only for CMMC, but maybe they have HIPAA data in their environment, or they just want to track that they have their employee social security numbers in that environment. So it's a place for companies, clients to track other data that they deem sensitive enough to protect
Mhm.
in this environment. And honestly, I haven't seen too many people use this, but if you scroll way down, people can create
Mhm.
custom categories of data. And then here, settings, you can integrate with your ticket system. Do you guys have one that you're
Mhm.
gonna use for your clients?
No, I'm advising clients to input their own ticketing system or an email of whoever they would like to
Oh, perfect.
have.
Okay, then I'm gonna skip over that whole.
I got it.
You got it. And then the default due date probably
Yep.
makes sense
And
to you.
quarters. Yep. And scale. Got it.
that makes sense, okay. This was really added for all of our service providers.
Mhm.
You know, as you can imagine, the more clients you get, you might need to reference that
Yeah,
client's, scale.
absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm having them, um, after I'm onboarding them on a call,
Mhm,
on a 1 hour call, making sure that they can log in, and then I'm doing the exact same you are, walking them through left to right from dashboards,
mhm,
doing start people tools, and I touch on uh, the rest very briefly.
mhm.
And before our next weekly meeting, um, I expect them to complete start people and tools.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Cool, cool.
and then
Well,
we'll finish the rest.
hopefully in the future, I'll have some videos where you could just say,
Hmm.
"Hey, client, watch these
Hmm.
videos before our next meeting." Um, all right. So people, I mean, then you probably know how to work this. So I'm just going to
Hmm.
highlight some stuff and tell me if you know about it, and then we don't have to waste the time. In here, I guess the only thing I want to there's a couple of things. When it comes to assignment of responsibility in FutureFeed, we recommend that you always assign responsibility to a role or a team.
Hmm.
And that's because of the attrition rate, a high turnover, right? So
Hmm.
if in the assess area under the IR controls, if I assigned all of that IR controls to Robert, because you can assign responsibility to an individual. If I
Hmm.
assigned it to Robert and Robert left the company, then I have to go back into those controls and get them assigned to the new person. Whereas
Hmm.
if I assign them the IR controls, the responsibility objective to this role, it stays tied to the role. And then if Robert leaves the company, Cynthia takes over. It's as simple as coming in here and changing the name. And now when Cynthia logs into FutureFeed, she's going to see all of the
Hmm.
responsibilities she's assumed because she's been assigned this role.
Right.
So it does cut down on having to deal with turnover. Same thing with your teams. You know, anybody who's a part of this team is going to see the responsibilities assigned to that team. So it's as simple as um, deleting people's names and adding them in. Make sure you set a team leader. So that's one thing I mention is try to assign
Hmm.
racy responsibility, poem responsibility, or task responsibility to a role or a team. Um, Another thing is you probably have noticed that we do have this no access
Hmm.
account creation. And it's essentially just logging someone so that way in the tool you can clearly identify them as responsible by name,
Hmm.
but they don't have access. But I would say for service providers, if you end up assigning responsibility a lot to a person, then I would just consider getting them access. So that way they can
Hmm.
use the future feed communication, task assignment, alerting, and notification features, right?
Yeah, I'm giving the organization that responsibility to define the users and assigning them to roles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one here, the default accountable role is, in future feed, there's multiple actions that are going to trigger a poem to be created.
Hmm.
And here, whoever you set here is once that poem is created, it's going to be automatically assigned to whoever you say here.
Hmm.
Then your client would need to make a point to open it back up and get it assigned to the appropriate person. But it's preventing that issue of having poem items that aren't assigned to
Hmm.
anybody, as well as if you create like if I was in here and created a new document listing, then this accountable role is assigned to someone off the bat. They just have to go in there and reassign it. And whoever that is, maybe that could be someone on your side. Whereas,
Hmm.
hey, I saw you guys just created these poems, but you didn't go in there and get it assigned to the right person because I see it's still assigned to me. So that would be a task that they would have to do.
Hmm.
And I'm just touching on like the stuff that's not so obvious in here. So that's the default countable role. And then here in populate, what we did is we read through the CMMC assessor's guide. So in here under a control, you know how it has the potential assessment methods and the interview?
Mhm.
So here
Mhm.
it says for this 357 control, potentially you could be interviewing, your
Right.
system and network administrator. And so that's whenever
Mhm.
called a team like that or a role, that's what
Mhm.
these are.
Perfect. Yeah.
That's what these are. And so the system and network administrator is called out under these 79 controls. So
Mhm.
if you're working with a client that's just getting started on implementing these requirements and trying to figure out who's responsible for what, you might want to leverage these
Mhm.
because now you would create a team, and that team is going to be assigned as, I think it's either the responsible or the accountable objective. If I go to this 311 control,
Mhm.
I'm going to see that I got the system and network administrator. Unless
Mhm.
this is a fake environment, someone could have deleted it. Yeah, it's supposed to be, but everybody's in here. This is the sample environment we give everybody access.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm currently in it right now.
Okay, cool. Um, all right, so that's about any questions about people. I didn't cover
Mm-mm.
the normal stuff, but I think you're using the tool, so under tools, we have 15 minutes left. Do you have any
Mhm.
specific questions or things that you want me to cover under tools or
Mm.
documents?
I'm just getting started, so I don't have any users that have populated those areas yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've
So
got
All right.
one, Delora.
uh, uh-uh. Oh yeah, that's right. Applied Minds, but I haven't been in there yet. Yeah, I gave it to him yesterday, so he went ham on it.
All right. So in here then, um, you're going to have your client start logging the technology that they're
Mhm.
using, owning, managing in their environment, in their company. We don't have any like mass import capability at this time, unfortunately. So it could take some time. Someone's going to have to come in here under tools, make sure they're under the right area. Are they going to log a tool or a service or a vendor or maybe specific assets? Um, and then they just hit the plus, type out the name of that asset under tools, get another field, so what's the mission,
Mhm.
identification, or authentication mechanism? What are you using? Entra ID. Is it on-prem or cloud-based?
Mhm.
And hit plus. Then it's going to create that inventory item. Then they'd move on
Mhm.
to logging the next one. So I would ask all your clients to have a hardware software listing, and then someone will have to take that and start adding those into FutureFeed.
Mhm.
Um, no, there's two sections in all of these sub pages here. You have an active section. So these are things that the company currently has, it's in production, they're utilizing it. Down below, this is pending. So these are things the company are going to acquire. So you
Mhm.
may run into some clients who don't have vulnerability scanning capability, in which case they either need to hire someone to do that or purchase a tool. Those type of things, you'd create that entry under the pending. And when you do that, then it's being put on your system POAM. But if you create it in the wrong area, don't worry, you can just always open it back up and it's related to this field. So
Mhm.
active or pending. If I click pending, I'm going to create a POAM. Um After then they log the tool, the next step is to go in, open up that inventory card and start filling out the metadata. Some important fields. Let me go to that Entra ID one. Actually, we'll do Prevail. So Prevail is a software as a service, bunch of inheritance in Prevail. So here, when you have technology that's managed by an external service provider, your clients should also identify that shared responsibility matrix associated with that external service provider, or provided by that external service provider, I should say. So here I have a Prevail CRM. This is going to be blank though. So they do have to, in the documents area, under reference documents, CRMs, this is where they would make a
Mhm.
document inventory item for that CRM. So the CRM, sometimes called SRM, that's
Mhm.
provided by the external service provider. So Prevail, I purchase Prevail, they're going to give me their latest CRM or SRM. Then I would take that, log it in here, um, create the entry, open up the document, and attach that CRM that they gave
Mhm.
me. So now after you've created a CRM document inventory item, under your tools then is where you could find that. So you're painting the picture of this piece of technology is managed by an external service provider, and that is outlined in this Prevail CRM. Um,
Mhm.
okay, and if you click on it, then it brings me to now I'm in my CRM ticket, and an assessor would be able to see that attached document.
Mhm.
Um,
So those documents are coming from the vendor?
yes,
Usually they do, yeah. And so what we're finding a lot is because there's so many startups in this space is that they haven't created any of those documents yet and have never heard what I'm talking about, and so I'm
yes,
forcing them to create them.
So is
yes,
this like the Microsoft for 365, the shared responsibility model where they outline you have to back up your instance? I see. Okay.
yeah,
Yes. It shows what is the responsibility of the provider and what is the responsibility of the customer so that there's no Spider-Man scenario.
yeah. And for any external service provider, an assessor, a C3PAO assessor, they're going to ask to see the CRM. And they've all decided to start calling them the CRM because the CMMC rule calls them the CRM. But share,
Everybody else on the planet calls it the shared responsibility
uh,
Oh,
model.
right? I
jeez.
hate that because I think there's a very they're two different documents and they have a different
Yeah.
audience. But
Yeah.
if it's called an SRM, an assessor shouldn't fail your client because it's called an SRM and not a CRM. Hopefully, I don't know. But anyway, yes, those are very important documents to have, and your clients will need to have them and give them to the assessor. So make sure they get uploaded into FutureFeed, and then you would want to associate that document to the tool or service, right? Because if you go up into tools, you have an area to document tools and services. So you need to associate that tool entry or that service entry with that CRM document. Um,
Quick question, what if that CRM document is not a PDF, but a web page?
you can do a link. That's a great
Okay.
point.
Okay, cool.
So in all of the documents, here a couple ways to drop a link. Hold on, I got some pop-ups. So in the notes area, you can find this chain link icon, and there you could have a link. Also in your live document editor, you can put a link in here as well. Right here. So two ways to add a link. Um, And this would, maybe you are going to work with clients who don't want to put their documents into FutureFeed. Maybe they don't want to use the live document editor, which is fine. And so they'll be creating those documents outside of FutureFeed. One thing you're going to want them to do is always provide you with the latest and greatest approved version of that document. That's part of their evidence, their body of evidence, which is another term that people assume means you're talking about a FedRAMP environment, but it's really just a term under NIST. But they're gonna have to have that approved. Here we're in a policy. They're gonna have to show that approved policy to an assessor. So you do want your clients to at least attach a version, the latest current approved version of the policy if they don't want to use this live document editor, or provide a link to where that document is housed.
Mhm.
What else about documents? Um, let's just open one up real quick. So make sure you do at least, you don't have to have every objective of the RACI model have someone assigned, but do try to have at least the responsible person identified for something. And that's applicable for poems and controls as well. At least have one team or role identified as either responsible or accountable. Um, an important thing as your clients are logging technology, as they're logging their documents, both document inventory items and technology or tool inventory items has this connect feature. So here's where you start where you start identifying the evidence for your requirements. Okay, so let me go to the tools, back to my Entra ID, one I just created. So it doesn't have any controls linked yet. Um, to do that, you hit connect, hit the plus, and here's where you're going to start identifying the requirements that are being implemented by whatever you're in. If you're in a document or a techno or a tool, it's implementing either directly implementing or indirectly implementing that requirement. And so you want to make that association. So for Entra, you could search by, I'm sure you guys are going to know what controls to link to an identification and authentication mechanism. But if your clients are doing this, just let them know they can search by control ID, or they could do um, keywords. Okay.
So this doesn't get auto mapped or auto populated. This has to be manual.
Yes, it's manual. Yep. And you
So
can,
Laura, would that be us doing this for
Uh,
them?
it depends on the client. There are some clients who are going to understand their environment better than others.
Okay.
Mhm. And so when you're making these connections, what you're doing is essentially building out that body of evidence. Because now in my assess area,
Mm.
I've established, um, from this point of view, my evidence for this. So I'm under the 311 requirement. Here's all my documents that are supporting this requirement. And then here's all my tools that are supporting this requirement. So when you're making those connections, that's how these entries are showing up down here. So there's my Entra ID one. And then when you do another internal assessment with your client, maybe after they've got a bunch of the requirements implemented, is when you're going to start cleaning up these connections. Because as I read through here, it may not make sense. This is probably a bad example, but if I go to one, I got a session lock. This is session lock. If I scroll through here, okay, why is my clean desk policy linked to my session lock um, requirement? My clean desk policy doesn't state anything about session lock. So I would clean up. I would remove that connection. Why is non-discrimination, anti-harassment associated with my session lock? I would remove that. So you clean up the connections, and what you want, the goal is to only have the documents and the technology linked that is your evidence. That's something that an assessor is going to view and look at to validate that requirement is implemented. And so you don't want them to have a whole bunch of stuff to look through, and because then it's going to make your assessment longer, and they could eventually start looking at stuff that they don't need to look at, which could lead to some failures. So only have connected what you want assessors to look at for the purpose of validating requirement implementation. And a rule of thumb up here in your implementation narrative, where you're defining how this requirement is implemented for that client, if you guys mention a process, a procedure, a document, then it should be found down below. If you mention a tool or some technology, it should be found down below. And then if you mention a person, a role, or team, then they should be connected down below.
Quick question. Is there anything on the roadmap to help like auto map some of those things? Because that seems like it could be very tedious.
Yeah, there is actually. We're working on implementing an AI capability where if a client uploaded a document, it could read that document and then identify the control requirements that are covered by that document. So when it comes to documents, it's a little bit harder because we don't, people can have one giant document that defines everything or separate.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it comes to technology, it's a little bit easier, right? If someone,
Right.
I do assessments, if someone tells me, or, just automatically, I know firewalls are associated with these couple controls, or MFA tools are associated with these
Mhm.
couple of controls. And so that mapping probably will be out before the document assistant
Mhm.
mapping, but
Mhm.
yes, we do have plans to improve and help with the control mapping.
Very nice.
Mhm.
Um, so under tools and documents, under tools, they're going to list all their technology, open up the inventory item, definitely get it categorized. Is it out of scope or is it one of the 4 in scope categories? Identify if there's FCI or CUI and connect it to the controls. That's the main, like, those are the important steps when you first start filling out FutureFeed. Same with the documents. Open it, log that document. You have, again, active documents. So these are things your clients should already have approved and being enforced and followed. Or if you're working on with them to complete some of your templates, then you would log those under pending. And then they would open it up, um, get it connected to the right controls. Task assignment here. This, you're going to create initial tasks. So this is something you could do in your template subscription environment. Um, if you put in there your guys' templates, then you might want to create tasks associated with what they first need to do, such as
Mhm. Mhm.
modify this template to fit your environment, or add your company name, whatever
Mhm.
whatever you need them to do. So you make tasks for that initial effort of getting something implemented and approved, but then you're going to also set up tasks related to the continuous monitoring. So whenever you roll out that service, you'd probably really want to develop out a lot of tasks.
Mhm.
So for example, if I go under this procedure one here, um, I'm sure you're going to have some sort of continuous monitoring plan or procedure that you would
Mhm.
follow for all your clients. So in a document like this under tasks, you might want to, looks like I did this previously, but I
Mhm.
created a task for, let's say you're going to do like quarterly conmon activity. Um, then,
Actually, we do have a client
Uh-huh.
meeting.
oh, right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Feel free to drop, but we pretty much covered it. I was just going to show you how to make things repeat. So you'd make tasks that
Mhm.
repeat to
Mhm.
support whatever has to happen throughout the week, month, year, have you. And
Perfect.
then sign up for the next session of training where we cover assess, SSP, and FutureFeed. Or if you're, as you're, working in these areas here, if you have more questions, you can sign up for this session again and ask them there.
Okay.
The last thing I want to point out to you guys, are you guys signed up for our 15 minutes with FutureFeed session?
No, not yet.
Okay, if you register for that, that's a weekly meeting. You have to register once and then it's on your calendar every week. And then you can join the weeks that you have questions about FutureFeed or the requirements or
Oh,
regulations.
cool. Okay, perfect.
All right.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah. Have a good day. Bye.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.